Now that we know how to modify list views as an end user, let's shift our focus to configuring default columns. This is something that administrators can do to ensure that key information is always visible when users first open a list view. In this lesson, we'll be working with the Equipment Maintenance History object to define which columns should be displayed by default. Now, with the exception of some standard objects, when an object is first created, the list view doesn't automatically display every available field. This is intentional, as deciding what fields should be displayed to users in a list view is an important decision an administrator needs to consider. Users can still modify their own views later, but it's important to note that default columns are the only fields that can be viewed in the list view. That means if a field isn't added to the default set, users won't be able to display it, even if they have permission to view it elsewhere. So it's important to consider what fields to include up front. To configure default columns, we'll head into Settings, then Data Management, and open Objects and Fields. From here, we'll find Equipment Maintenance History and click Edit Default Columns in the top right. Now on this page, we can see the current default columns for this object, and right now it's pretty bare with minimal data. So let's go ahead and add all the fields we want to expose in this list view. For now, we're going to leave the item column in place displaying the record ID. Later in this course, we will adjust it to display the inspection date instead. So let's go ahead and add the inspector field. You'll notice as you start to add columns to the list view, you will also get a preview of how it will look to the end user as well. Now, don't be concerned that we don't have any inspector data at this point. We're going to address that later in this course. Next, add the equipment type field, followed by the condition field, then the remedial action field, and finally inspection notes. It's also quite common for users to want to know when a record was created or last modified. So let's also add both of those fields to our list view as well. Now before we save our changes, it's worth pointing out that you're also able to reorder the columns at any point by clicking and dragging the columns vertically. And administrators are also able to update the column titles. By default, the system will use the field name in the column headers, so let's jump in and make a few small adjustments to ensure the best user experience by adding spaces between words and improving column headers like Inspector ID. We will just make it Inspector instead. Now you're ready to click Save, and when you click on Equipment Maintenance in the navigation, you will notice that your list view is no longer bare. And that's all there is to setting up your default columns. We'll see you in the next lesson.